This video is sponsored by Isolate, manufacturers of the mains conditioner and power cords used by a British audiophile. For more information about these and their other products, please click the link in the description. Sugden Audio is one of those brands with a customer loyalty that even the chief brass at Apple would envy. You very rarely hear anybody complaining about a Sugden amplifier. That's why it's one of the most respected companies in the hi-fi industry. James E. Sugden was the first person to develop a pure Class A transistor-based amplifier in 1967, the A21. The variant is still in production today, and the firm is primarily known for hand-building Class A amplifiers in Yorkshire, England. Actually, that's not very far from where I live, but Sugden make one amplifier that has a very different topology, and apparently it's still voiced to sound like a Sugden. The late Tony Miller developed it to celebrate Sugden's 50th anniversary. It's not a single-ended Class A design, but it's not a conventional Class AB design either. I'll explain later. The problem with Class A designs is that they're inefficient. Unless you want an amplifier the size of a fridge, you're going to find that they run very hot and have limited power. In the typically smallish rooms that we have here in the UK in the summer, having one of those amplifiers is going to feel like you've pitched a tent in the Gobi Desert. So what is this somewhat overlooked amplifier in Sugden's lineup, and could it offer all the benefits of Class A ownership without any of the obvious drawbacks? The Sugden Masterclass ANV-50 retails for £4,794 in the UK. It's a conventional rack width unit measuring 430 by 143 by 370 millimeters, or 16.9 by 5.6 by 14.6 inches. It looks like a typical Sugden with a folded steel chassis and thick aluminium anodized front panel. Charcoal and titanium finishes come as standard, but custom colours are available for extra charge. There's a button for power up and down, an LED power indicator beside it, and a centrally located rotary volume dial offering a good amount of resistance. Next to the IR sensor for the remote control is another large knob for input selection. It's not motorized, and the 6 buttons on the supplied remote control will only adjust volume in small, large and intermediate steps. The simplicity continues on the rear with 5 sets of single-ended RCA inputs, a tape loop and 1 set of pre-outs. All the connectors, including those for the speaker terminals, are of good quality. This is a purist analog amplifier with no built-in DAC or phonostage. Taking a look at the internals, the first thing you'll notice is there's no power transformer. That's why the ANV-50 weighs 11 kilograms or 24 pounds, the same as the smaller A21 Signature, which has a linear power supply. This amplifier has a switch mode power supply, but for good reason. They're very fast, operating at 1 MHz, and there's one for each channel. According to Sugden, they're high current and very stable, allowing the ANV-50 to instantly deliver power in a manner comparable to their Class A designs, where the transistors are always on. It's one of the reasons the power amplifier section can double its output from 50 watts per channel into 8 ohms to 100 watts into 4 ohms. The other reason is that this is a 2-stage power amplifier module. A 4 watt per channel pure Class A first stage feeds the Class AB second stage. It features a comparator and correction circuit that compensates for any errors due to distortion and varying loads. There's an identical power amplifier module on the other side. It's a dual mono current feedback design. It's nice to see all discrete through-hole components in the power amplifier. The preamplifier is DC coupled to the power amplifier, so there's no capacitors in the signal path to degrade sound quality. There are no tiny surface mount components in the preamplifier section either. A fully hand-built through-hole circuit topology is what you're paying for. Two questions come to mind. Does the ANV-50 sound like a typical Sugden Class A amplifier? And how does it compare to the class leaders in terms of sound quality? Well, let me start with the first question, and the answer is not really. The Sugden A21 Signature that retails for just under £3 grand has a weighty bass and rich yet revealing mid-range there's some lack of definition at low frequencies and softening to mid-range transients, imparting an organic presentation. Sugden's flagship integrated amplifier is the Masterclass IA4, costing £6,670. It shares the same sonic character as its little brother, but provides greater resolution, scale and dynamics. The ANV-50 has a more even-handed delivery than Sugden's Class A offerings. There's still a light dusting of added warmth to the mid-range, but the bass is tighter but lighter. Mid-range transients are more crisp, and as for the high frequencies, I'd say that they're no less or more resolving. Where the A21 Signature and IA4 have a distinct character, the ANV-50 doesn't. Those craving the classic Sugden Class A romanticism may be disappointed, but people looking for an amplifier to get out of the way should be delighted. It's hard to describe the sound because the ANV-50 doesn't blow your socks off in any particular regard, but it doesn't drop the ball either. It's one of those amplifiers that's very good at pretty much everything. What the ANV-50 has in common with the rest of the Sugden family is an ability to produce a large soundstage. The imaging is not laser etched, but then the precise placement of performers has never been a Sugden standout feature. They're just competent in that regard. The control over the speaker drivers is superior to any of my reference amplifiers below £3,000. 50 watts into 8 ohms may not sound like much, but it's this Sugden amplifier's ability to double its output into 4 ohms that gives a greater real-world indication of its driving ability. I don't want to get into specifics, but it's ample for most people, even with lowish sensitivity speakers in average-sized rooms at listening levels that won't annoy neighbours. Even my £3,250 Hegel H400 can't match the ANV-50's ability to separate instruments and extract nuanced information, although the Hegel retains a similar amount of composure at the sensible volumes I care to listen at. It has the capability to play louder. Both amplifiers are as close to neutral sounding as it gets. There's a subtle difference in tonality, with the H190 being a tiny bit drier. This week's music recommendation is sure to get your toes tapping, a funky reggae-infused electronica gem thanks to Danish duo Enyor's production, featuring Natasha Sard's vocals. The 6-minute 31 version I found on Tidal is a reasonable recording. The Sugden is able to hang on to bass lines and deliver crisp transients to capture the boogie factor beautifully. Firing up my Exposure 21 Pre and 18 Super monoblocks shows that the Sugden Masterclass ANV-50 can be bettered. Those vintage amps have more acoustic mass in the mid-range, a greater sense of scale, dynamics, separation and detail, providing more musical insight. Using my old exposures as a common point of reference, I can conclude that the £5,900 Hegel H400 also sounds bigger, cleaner and more precise than the ANV-50, but it's not as natural sounding. The Atoll AN400 is another one of my favourites around this price, retailing for £5,500. It sounds similar to a Class A Sugden, but on steroids, rich, resolving, big and dynamic, thanks to oodles of power. The ANV-50 is cheaper and arguably the better all-rounder than either of those two amplifiers in all bar the most demanding systems, because it doesn't have quite the same resolution and sense of authority at the end of the day. 50 watts has certain limitations, no matter how good the power supply. I'm sure I'm going to get asked, so my final comparison is with the excellent Luxman L-505Z, also more expensive at £5,500. For clarity and spatial abilities, it's still unmatched at its price point in my experience. The ANV-50 shares the L-505Z's neutrality and natural tonality, but not fidelity. But Luxman had to scale down the power supply in order to get the L-505Z to their target price point. So despite it having 100 watts rather than 50, it's the Sugden that retains better composure at volumes where I tend to crank things up. And for me, in this room with the speakers that I tend to use, that's around 85 decibels. This is going to be short and sweet because the Sugden Masterclass ANV-50 has no built-in DAC or phono stage. It also imparts very little personality on the music, so this is an appraisal of the partner equipment as much as the amplifier. My digital front end has changed. The Denafruit's Pontus 15th is still taking care of digital to analog conversion duties, but I've substituted my Auralic Aries G1 transport for the Volumio Revo whilst it's still here, as it offers slightly better sound quality. As for speakers, first up are the £1,800 Quad Revela 1s. They offer great resolution when driven properly with a slightly mid-forward tonal balance. The ANV-50 is an ideal partner at all bar party volume levels. The £1,500 Dali Mini SEs are easy speakers to drive due to these mini monitors having limited bass, but they also have a hugely insightful mid-range that the Sugden amplifier is able to reveal. But if it's revealing you're after, then the £3,000 Monitor Audio Gold 106Gs are unparalleled for the money. They're also a bit lean in the mid-range, which the ANV-50 isn't going to compensate for. I'm fortunate to have quite a few price-appropriate speakers in at the moment, so I have a couple more pairings for you that illustrate the Sugden amplifier's ability to play well with a wide variety of speakers. The Rubikore E50s retail for circa €4,000. Depending on the finish, they're another pair of highly resolving speakers but with a warm tonal balance. Those purify transducers like a bit of current, and the ANV-50 is obliging. The £5,000 Alta Audio Alessas have deep bass due to a transmission line loading. Ideally, I'd crave an amplifier with slightly better low-end control and greater resolution to get the best out of these uber-revealing speakers, but this Sugden amplifier fares well. Had enough yet? Time to wrap things up. Sugden Audio's decision to mark their half-centennial anniversary by veering away from a single-ended Class A amplifier design should be hailed a success. The ANV-50 is well constructed, offers great detail whilst remaining neutral and natural in its delivery. There's enough real-world power to satisfy all bar the most demanding of users. If you're after the classic Sugden warm and euphonic sound, stick with their other offerings, but the ANV-50 will pair successfully with a wider variety of speakers. It also does a better job of getting out of the way and simply delivering the music. The thing is, for about £1,000 more, there are options out there that deliver a bit more scale, authority, and a touch more fidelity. But there's no escaping that this amplifier offers great all-round performance for the money. The Sugden Masterclass ANV-50 gets a very highly recommended from this channel. I've seen some excellent products come through my door in the last 6 months. In fact, I don't think it's ever been better. So my question for today is, what do you think's really good that you'd like to see me review in the next 6 months? Please let me know in the comment section. I'm sure you know what to do by now if you want to support me here and what I do. Like, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification. Check me out on Patreon. There's a couple of tiers you can access there if you think I can help you on your audiophile journey. Also check out the ABA Club on Patreon, which has some great ways to interact with me and fellow Patreons. But for today, for now, British Audiophile, signing off.